It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Tuesday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. Our featured story tonight, we are resuming our coverage of the murder. It's not really murder. The justified execution of Alex Pretti in Minneapolis over the weekend. And I did a long show about this last night. I think I did a 1 hour, 45-minute monologue, and I really went into the whole story. There's so much to say about it, I think. We didn't really finish it. So tonight, we're going to get into it. Our featured story, we're once again talking about the killing of this anti-ICE protester in Minneapolis. And specifically tonight, I want to talk about the response from the Trump administration. And surprise, surprise, he chickened out. Predictable as always. Very obvious response. Trump challenges the country, challenges the world, threatening everybody, hardcore. There's a little bit of resistance, and then he totally backs down, totally chickens out. And we're going to work through it. We have a number of sources here. There's a lot of things going on. Trump comes out there, first and foremost, and he pulls back the head of Border Patrol. This Bovino guy, which is on TikTok and he's on social media, always being harassed by protesters, they're pulling him out. Not only that, Trump is criticizing the guy. Trump goes on Fox News and says, well, he's really out there. He's a really radical guy. Okay. Then he has a phone call with Tim Walz, the governor, Jacob Frey, the mayor, and says we're going to de-escalate the situation in Minneapolis. Then we hear from sources on the ground that Border Patrol has new orders. What are the orders? Even if they check a license plate and it is registered to somebody who is in the country illegally, Border Patrol will no longer arrest that person unless they have a criminal rap sheet. So we are back to the Obama-era policy of only deporting those criminal illegal aliens as opposed to those non-criminal illegal aliens. That's the new policy. There's now mounting pressure from the Republicans, from Republican-aligned donors, from the voters to shut down the mass deportations. And it's only January. 4 weeks into 2026. Seems like it's already over. If only somebody warned us. Think about it. You have two things happening simultaneously. I love this. Got what I voted for. Hey, I'm an idiot. Got what I voted for. So we have an armada, as Trump describes it, of U.S. warships headed to the Middle East to bomb Iran. War games across the entire Middle East. We're going to war with Hezbollah in Iraq. We're going to war with Iran. We're putting missile defense systems in all our bases. We're going to war with the whole Middle East. Simultaneously, we have 230,000 deportations for 2025, and they're already shutting it down under public pressure from the Wall Street Journal, from the Republican conference, from the donors, from the public. Got what you voted for? Oh, did you get what you voted for? Or did you fall for it again? If only someone had warned us. If only during the election somebody had said, maybe we shouldn't vote for Trump. He's going to bring us to war in Iran and won't deport anybody. Oh, wait. I told you so. I told you this is exactly what would happen. I predicted it to the letter, practically to the day. Nobody knows the day or the hour when we're going to war with Iran and canceling mass deportations, but we do know the year, 2026. So we'll talk about it. It's pretty amazing. No pun intended. Pretty sweet. It's pretty sweet to be vindicated like that. But we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk about what is happening in Congress. More of the same. There is a deadline on Friday to pass a spending bill, $1.7 trillion to fund, I believe it's six. Honestly, I don't know if it's 6 or 7. It's either 6 or 7 government departments and agencies. The Democrats now will not supply the votes. You need 60 votes in the Senate to get the package through. You need at least 7 Democrats. They're not going to vote for it because they want to separate the package out and defund Homeland Security. They say the only way they will provide the votes is if we break apart the spending bill, we'll fund everything else. But in order to fund DHS, the Democrats want all kinds of new protocols for ICE. They want body cameras. They want accountability. They may even pull back the funding from the big, beautiful bill last June. Remember the $190 billion for Homeland Security? I think it was $80 billion for ICE. Remember that? Now they want to take it away. And this is a preview. I hope you know that. This is exactly how I said it would go. I said this in 2024. I said this in 2025. I said you're going to get into 2026. It's a midterm. The media, which has been dormant, important to understand. Mainstream media has basically been neutered after October 7th. They have acquiesced to the Republican ascendancy, the death of woke, because the media is Jewish. And when Israel was attacked, they wanted Republicans to get elected to destroy Israel's enemies. Okay, well, now the left has awakened. The left is back. The media is back. And just as I predicted, in 2026, during the midterms, they are doing this wall-to-wall coverage of the deportations, embellishing it. They are escalating the rhetoric, increasing the temperature, as they say. Republicans are going to back down. We're going to lose the midterms anyway. We lose the House in the midterms because we got a 3-vote majority in the House. Democrats get seated next year, and then they impeach everybody. They get in and they impeach probably half a dozen cabinet officials. Trump, Stephen Miller. I don't know that they can impeach him. I'm not sure. But they'll impeach Trump. They will impeach Pete Hegseth. They will impeach Kristi Noem if she's still around. They're going to impeach a lot of people. They're going to investigate. They're going to use their subpoena power. They're going to call a committee. And they're going to shut down the government all the time. They're going to defund everything. So I told you this. If you are a viewer of the show for the past couple of years, you know that I was on the money. And I was saying it like every day repeatedly throughout 24, 25. I said, this is how it's going to go. And so I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's only because it has finally arrived. This scenario, which I have been predicting for 2 years, is now here, taking place in front of us. So we'll talk about the situation in the Senate as well. Should be a pretty good show. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Let me know what you think about my new mustache. What do you think? You know, I had the beard. The problem with the beard, though, is it was hiding how thin I've gotten. Because I have ascended, I've gotten much more lean, but when I have a beard, I look fatter. It makes my face look fatter. Now that I don't have the beard, you can really see the transformation. I think I'm going to get rid of the mustache probably next week, but I just wanted to have fun with it. So let me know what you think. You know, my security told me it looks terrible. My security says, you should not have a mustache. You don't have the face for it. I'm like, okay, like, just protect my life. Don't attack my appearance. Joking, of course. I think he might be right. He's definitely onto something. I assented. He said, no, the beard's good, but the mustache, you got to get rid of the mustache. I was like, okay. Anyway, I had a goatee. I shaved it down to a goatee and then I got rid of it. It looked cheesy. Anyway. Yeah, wow. I can't get enough of this. I cannot get enough of this. I think I lost like 10 pounds, 12 pounds. And now that I could see my cheeks, I could really see it. Okay, all right. Anyway, so comment on the new look. Please feel free, comment on the new look. Check out the merch store, Fuentes.store. Get your Jeffrey Epstein quarter zip. Everyone, I mean, our USA quarter zip, it has no relation to that pedophile. It has no relation to that really the monster Jeffrey Epstein. It's just a quarter zip. I promise it can't hurt you. It cannot hurt you. It will not molest you. It is just a 80% cotton, 20% polyester. It has been constructed in the United States. It has been put together it has been assembled in the United States, and everyone's getting them. We have sold thousands of these. It's my #1 bestseller of all time. And it looks great. You saw it on my Telegram. Everybody's wearing them. So check that out. We also have our America First hats. We have our t-shirts, hoodies, everything. Check it out. AmericaFirst.plus to subscribe. $100 a month. You get to be in a group chat with me, hang out with me, talk to me, annoy me in private. It's all there. Okay, we're going to dive into the show here. We're going to get started with our news. As I said, last night I spent a ton of time talking about the killing of this anti-ICE protester, Alex Pretti, over the weekend. And it really, to this day, stuns me how many people are not getting it about this guy. I see many right-wing people online, and once again, just like Renée Good, they are treating it like this is some kind of tragedy. They are making it a gun issue. They're making it a constitutional issue. And I think I said it very succinctly yesterday, but I'll just briefly say it again tonight. You do realize that the left is real, okay? Everybody has been so caught up in the Israel thing, they don't realize that the left is a real entity, okay? And not for nothing, but the left is also extraordinarily Jewish. As a matter of fact, arguably, the Jewish left has been the primary battering ram against the white race, even more so, I would contend, than the Zionists. And the reason being is because Jewish leftists are destroying our home. Jewish leftists are destroying America. They're destroying Europe through mass immigration, which is irreversible. The money that we spent overseas, the wars that we've done, it's not like I think these are good things. In a way, they're detrimental. But what is being done through mass migration, that is truly the existential threat. That is truly the death of the white race. And that is their explicit, publicly stated goal, is they want to make white people a minority in all of these countries. Now, once you understand this, you realize that if the left wins, if the Democrats win, if the left wins, they're going to open the borders again. All of these illegal immigrants that are here are going to have kids. Those kids will become citizens. Those new Americans are going to have a higher fertility rate than the natives. This is a problem in perpetuity. So if you have a mass amnesty, you're going to get more illegal immigration. The more immigration that you have, the more that the death of the white majority is expedited, the quicker it arrives, the earlier it arrives. Once that happens, we're outnumbered, And then we're outvoted. We're outnumbered by non-white people who are all socialist. A good chunk of them, the majority of them, are favorable towards socialism. They're favorable towards this redistributive politics. They're in favor of these big Democrat political machines in the cities. Once you're outnumbered, you're outvoted, overpowered, and then they secure for the rest of our lifetimes mass migration, expropriating property and money from white people, destroying white neighborhoods, making sure that there is no corner of the country where diversity has not penetrated. And then it's over. And when you think about where we're going, if nothing changes, if there isn't a radical intervention to stop this, because that is what is required. You realize this, yes? The future of our country looks like LA. The future of our country looks like New York, where it is impossible for a white person to win an election. It is impossible for a right-wing person that is against crime and corruption and immigration to win an election. And things just get worse. They just keep sliding. Response to natural disasters is bad. Taxes are high. Government services are inaccessible. Even private services are overwhelmed. Crime is everywhere. Quality of life decreases. Quality of everything decreases. And this is just going to be our country everywhere. It's going to be like Houston, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, New York. No escape. And slowly but surely, all of white civilization just collapses. It is no longer Christian. It is no longer moral. It is no longer orderly, prosperous, intelligent, literate. All of that stuff goes away. And then we live among the ruins. We live among the ruins of a formerly great empire, a formerly great civilization, like the people that lived in Rome after the fall of the Roman Empire. We will be building shanties and huts and favelas inside the ruins of our previous civilization, inside the ruins of airports and skyscrapers after we've lost the ability to fly and the ability to build. Now, you must visualize this when you realize what must be done. You actually have to visualize it and imagine a future that looks like this, and then go back in time. You have to put yourself in the position of your grandchildren and great-grandchildren in the year 2100 and look around at your majority-minority country that looks like South Africa, where it's just trash and graffiti and filth and homeless people and vagabonds and criminals. And then you have to go back in time to now when we can prevent it. And then think about what you're willing to do to stop this. And then killing a stupid fat lesbian and a male nurse doesn't seem so bad, does it? We were going to deport 30 million people, but then a fat lesbian and a male nurse died, so now we have to give them all amnesty. 10 million illegals under Joe Biden. They slipped under the radar, crossed into the country. Oh, guess we got to take care of them forever now. We got to pay for them forever and all their descendants because a fat lesbian poet and a male nurse got killed. You don't understand. We have to win. There is no substitute for victory. We only care about victory. And here's the grand irony. I see all these Israel critics, the JQ squad, they idolize Hitler. They worship Hitler. Do you know what Sieg Heil even means? It means hail victory. And not to go like full Nazi or something, but there is no substitute for victory. We have to win. They have to lose. And they, yes, sometimes includes white leftists that have citizenship, that were a nurse, or were kind to everybody they met. Did you see the eulogy for Renée Good? They said, she literally sparkled. She was literally sparkling. Well, now she's not. Fuck them. They have to lose. We have to win. And do you know what winning looks like? It means 30 million deportations. That's what winning looks like. It means 30 million people that have no legal standing to be here are physically removed from our country and put far away from us. That is what victory looks like. 30 million fewer invaders and putting an ocean or a gulf between them and us, and then building a giant wall so they can never come back. That's what victory looks like. And if some white saviors, if some brainwashed, progressive, white liberals want to throw themselves in front of the tanks, I say run them over. And that's just a bonus. If a bunch of white saviors want to give their lives for these invaders that hate us, that take advantage of us, that have no respect for us, they want to throw themselves in front of the treads of the tanks, I say keep going. I say run them over, and we'll just say that's the bonus round. That's victory. That's what victory looks like. And I told you the other night, that is what is happening in Minneapolis. These are not protests. These are far-left agitators. If they had it their way, this country would be burning. Do you understand that, right? If Alex Pretti and Renée Good had it their way, this country would burn to the ground, and they would be laughing. You do realize that, right? It's either we win or they win. And if they win, we are going to die. If they win, you are going to have President Kamala Harris, President Hillary Clinton, President Stacey Abrams, and they are going to be giggling. They will be chortling as you and every other far-right Nazi MAGA Republican is thrown into a concentration camp. While they destroy our monuments, while they destroy our churches, while they destroy our neighborhoods and make everything ugly, because that is what they do, and they will be laughing about it. They will be smoking pot with their black boyfriends. They will be banging on the drum in the ruins of our city, in the Renée Good autonomous zone, while the country burns. And that's a vision of the future. Either they have it their way or we have it our way. And this is the confrontation. This is the standoff. Trump, representing Native Americans, native-born Americans, Trump representing the historic American nation, is taking the fight to them with ICE. Yes, he has deputized a private army. Good. Past due. Past due. Because the National Guard and the police and all these other people, they are influenced and infiltrated by the radical left. To the extent that they say Trump has deputized a private army, don't you realize that's a good thing? There is a military force with a $90 billion budget with the constitutional power to deport millions of people, and the only condition is you want to see illegal immigrants out of the country. Everybody that signs up for ICE is going to be a loyal Trump supporter, a loyal America Firster who wants illegals out of the country. Don't you understand that's a good thing? People are saying President Trump has deputized a private army of immigration restrictionist white guys who are empowered by the feds to throw out all the illegals, and there's no accountability at all. There's no body cameras. They're just beating people up. They're just kicking left-wing pieces of shit in the ass and pepper spraying them in the face. It's like, I'm sorry, where's the, what's the problem here? I thought you were trying to convince me this is a bad thing. No, this is a good thing. And this is the confrontation. It is these mobilized, organized, left-wing agitators in Minneapolis trying to shut down the deportations versus ICE, versus this force from the government. And we want the government to win this one. We want ICE to win this one. We want ICE to establish order in the city and then facilitate the mass deportations of these people. Get every Somalian out, get every Haitian out, get every Venezuelan refugee out. Venezuela's safe now. We made it safe. Now they can all go home. Send them all back. And otherwise, it's like I said, what is the alternative? Then they are effectively given amnesty. If ICE is not able to do the job because they're hamstrung by oversight and public pressure and regulations, you do realize this is like the George Floydification of ICE. This is like a George Floyd situation. This is neo George Floyd. Some piece of shit dies because they're stupid. And then there's all these calls now about brutality. Well, I support law enforcement, but this is brutal. Alongside calls to abolish it, ICE will be hamstrung. The leadership is not going to have their back. And you know what's going to happen? Then you can't do mass deportations. And if you can't do deportations under this administration, you're never going to get them. And if you never get them, then it's effectively an amnesty. And if it's an amnesty, then that means these people won. That means there's true lawlessness. It's an open border. Invaders are welcome. We have no credibility as a regime. You can't be here lawfully, but we're not going to do anything about it. I mean, you lose all credibility at that point. So this is a showdown and we have to win. And this brings me to our story for tonight. I want to talk about Trump's response. Trump is absolutely backing down. This is a horrific disappointment, total embarrassment. If you're a Trump supporter, and I don't consider myself one anymore, you should be furious. You should be angry. You should be honestly on social media complaining. If it were me and I voted for this crap, I would be in the street protesting, honestly. But they're making excuses. So in 2024, Trump promised mass deportations. That was the promise, wasn't it? Joe Biden had more border apprehensions than any other president by far. It wasn't even close. It was like double the next highest number of annualized apprehensions on the southern border. Trump got elected on that basis, that he was going to reverse that. Not stop it, but stop it and reverse it. People like to point out that the border is secure and illegal immigrants aren't coming here anymore. That's actually not enough. Because if you've had 10 million illegals come here, it's not enough to simply stop the flow of 10 million more. You have to reverse what has taken place. Otherwise, it's too little too late. We had an illegal immigration problem when Trump got elected the first time in 2016. It only got worse. It got worse under Trump. It got exponentially worse under Biden. Now they say, well, at least the border is secure now. I'm sorry, that's 10 years too late. We voted to secure the border in 2016. Now we need to secure the border and reverse what has taken place, at the minimum in the last 8 years, but ideally in the last 20 years, 30 years. It is now unacceptable to take anything less. It must be a fully secure border and mass deportations. He is elected with this mandate because everybody was sick of the number of illegal aliens here, even the Democrats, even the black people, even liberals. And you might remember during the peak of this, around 2022, 2023, these Venezuelans were everywhere, on every street corner. They were running out of room to house all these people, building refugee camps, effectively, building these tent cities, putting them up in hotels. They were literally being put up in luxury hotels in Chicago on the Gold Coast, in Manhattan, in New York City. Finally, people had enough. They voted for Trump to get rid of this problem. And the reality is, let me tell you this, Trump never had any intention of actually following through on any of this. Because to deport 10 million people, or even let's say 1 million people per year, which is 4 million in the second term, you are going to need a whole of government approach. You're going to need everybody, all hands on deck. You're going to need Department of Homeland Security, Department of War, Department of Justice, fully focused, fully committed, marshaling all resources. You're going to need the right people at the top, the right department heads. You're going to need the right chiefs of staff. You're going to need the right undersecretaries. You're going to need everybody to be on the same page, competent, focused. And they're going to need the will to follow through on all of this. You're going to need more personnel, more infrastructure, more training. It's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to take time to get to the point where ICE is even capable. And then, once you start getting millions of people out of the country, if you get to that point, you need to stand up to the public pressure. Because you can't make 1 million people per year disappear from the United States without people noticing. That's 4,000 per day. You cannot have this huge mobilization of law enforcement and military force in the country in major cities, rounding up 4,000 people per day and physically apprehending them, detaining them, transporting them, and removing them. You can't do this invisibly. It is visible, it is highly visible, and it is extremely contentious. You are going into these communities with law enforcement vehicles, in some cases military vehicles. These are raids, people that are heavily armed in tactical gear. And what do you think is going to happen when you're doing this in the major hubs of illegal immigration, like LA or New York or Chicago? It is going to provoke resistance. And resistance creates friction and conflict and confrontation, and that draws in the media, because it turns into a spectacle. And now it's on camera. Now it's on TV. And as long as it's going on, there's confrontation and conflict, and it's on TV. And as long as it's on TV, there's a war of attrition against public perception. The public watching this day in and day out, and mistakes are going to be made and tragedies are going to happen. Slowly but surely, people are going to drop off. Women don't have the stomach for this. Minorities will not support this. Even a lot of white people don't have the balls to support this. So it's not enough that you have people that are focused, competent, ideologically aligned. It's not enough that it's a whole of government mobilization, top to bottom, that this is really a massive undertaking, but you also need the political will and the character to follow through even when it becomes unpopular. There needs to be this understanding going in that it's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be unpopular. There's gonna be bloodshed and tragedies, but it is worth it. That on the other side of it, it will be a major victory. And maybe everybody will pay for it. Maybe everybody involved will pay for it in some way or another, but it's worth it. That is what was required. Now in 2024, I'm looking at Trump and Vance. And after the election, during the transition, I'm looking at Pam Bondi and Kristi Noem. And it was obvious then, as it is now, that none of those people fit this description. None of them. Not Trump, not Vance, not Noem, not Bondi. None of them fit this description. None of them are serious. None of them know what it takes. None of them have the wherewithal to mobilize all of the government. Not all of them are on the same page ideologically, and absolutely none of them have the political will to follow through. Well, now here we are. So let's start in 2025. There was a New York Times piece that came out at the beginning of 2026, and they estimated how many people have actually been deported. There's been a lot of debate about how many people have actually been deported because so much is being said about it. It's so visible, and ICE is everywhere, and it's the talk of the town. And the Trump administration swears that it is happening, but the numbers are being contested for various reasons. The Democrats are embellishing it for their purposes. The Republicans are embellishing it for their purposes. Well, what is a deportation? It's actually more complicated than you think. When we think of a deportation, what we are talking about is what is called an interior removal. Specifically, what this means is that Border Patrol or ICE is going into the country, the interior, meaning inside of the borders of the country, in a major city, in a residential area, and they are arresting somebody that does not have legal residency, and then they are removing them from the country. That is what we would call a deportation. But strictly speaking, that is a particular kind of interior removal. What is not a deportation is when somebody arrives at the border and they are turned away. That is classified as a deportation, But technically speaking, it is called a return. An interior removal versus a return at the border. They're being returned from where they came. Two different things. Additionally, during the Obama administration, just to give you an idea of the numbers, in the first year of the Obama administration in 2009, Obama had 260,000 interior removals. 2009, that's the first full year. Well, I guess it's not a full year because he got inaugurated in January, but in 2009, that's Obama's first year in office. He deports 268,000 people. Those are 268,000 interior removals. By the end of Obama's second term in 2016, the number is down to 60,000. Why does it fall so precipitously? Because starting in the 2010s, Obama launched a new policy where they would no longer remove people for merely being in the country illegally. Rather, the interior removals going forward would be only those that are committing crimes. In other words, they introduced a new distinction. And they said there are criminal illegal aliens and non-criminal illegal aliens. There are criminal illegal aliens that have committed a murder or a sexual assault or a battery. They have some criminal rap sheet. And then there's a non-criminal illegal alien that is merely here illegally without residency or citizenship. So how then do the numbers fall so much because of this new distinction? Because going forward, the only way that they are deporting people is they're relying on local law enforcement. If the local police arrest somebody who's committing a crime, like let's say the local cops pick up a murderer, the local cops pick up a drug dealer, a rapist, well, they're going to run that person's information. If that person is a non-citizen, then they are turned over to immigration services. You see? So that's why that distinction really matters. You've got interior removals and returns. Then in the 2010s, you get this new distinction of criminal illegal aliens, non-criminal illegal aliens, and they're not touching the so-called non-criminals because they're not doing raids. They're not hunting them down. They're not rounding them up. They're not breaking down doors. They're relying on law enforcement to arrest criminals in their ordinary law enforcement duties. If they happen to be illegal, then they are given over to federal jurisdiction and they're deported. This is how the numbers get so low. Well, the New York Times says, after all of the debate and discussion about the numbers, that this first year of Trump's second term, Trump has only deported 230,000 people. 230,000. So Obama, in his first year, deported 268,000. Those are interior removals. You cannot fudge the numbers there. People like to say, oh, that's a myth. That counts returns. No. Obama had 38,000 more interior removals than Trump's first year in office. Those are your mass deportations, okay? And how do we know that's the case? Because ICE and DHS are not even publicly releasing the numbers. They haven't released the numbers since December of 2024. That's the last time we have heard a peep out of ICE and DHS about how many people that they have actually removed because it's so embarrassingly low. Okay? So just as I predicted, these mass deportations are not happening. They're not. Because nobody in this administration is serious enough, competent enough, willing enough to do it. So we have as many removals as Obama, and keep in mind, this is actually extra bad because not only is it fewer than a Democrat, than Obama, when this is supposed to be the deporter-in-chief, mass deportations president, but this is also after, like 15 years of open borders. Complete open borders under Biden, mostly open borders under Trump 1, totally open borders under Obama with catch and release. So after all of this illegal immigration, now you're doing barely as good as Obama in his first year. Well, it gets better. So as I said in 24 and 25, you go and start rounding people up. How many is 260,000 in a year? Well, it's fewer than 1,000 per day. And maybe they're arresting 2,000 people per day. I think that's the rough estimate, is about 1,500 to 2,000 arrests. The actual removals are lower than 1,000. Either way, these are the numbers. Roughly 800 to 2,000 people are being apprehended every single day inside the interior. If you want to deport 1 million people per year, that number needs to be like 4,000. Needs to be like 3,500 to 4,000. Needs to be about 2 times as many, 2 to 3 times as many as are already being arrested. Well, Trump is deporting this negligible amount of people, and it provokes this huge response, predictably. The Democrats, after a year of licking their wounds from the election, have now rallied, consolidated, they're coordinating and organizing, and now they are mounting this organized resistance to the deportations. And we've seen this in Chicago, we've seen it in Los Angeles, now we're seeing it in Minneapolis. I saw J.D. Vance say, this is only happening in Minneapolis, this is isolated. It's not isolated at all. I don't know what he's talking about. When they did Operation Midway Blitz in Chicago in the late summer and the fall of 2025, there was tons of this stuff going on. Just like it's happening in Minneapolis, it was happening in Chicago. It wasn't as bad, granted, there wasn't as much rioting, but you had a coordinated effort of local progressive cells chasing ICE, identifying their license plates, boxing them in, ramming their vehicles. You had riots outside the detention center. It was happening here too. And who could forget in Los Angeles in June, when you had mass deportations and National Guard in LA, there were full-scale riots. They shut down the highway. They were burning Waymos and other self-driving cars, throwing Lime scooters all over the place. I mean, what are people talking about? It happens everywhere. It was happening in New York. It was happening in Chicago. It happened in LA. And now it is happening in Minneapolis. Now, predictably, I said this last year too. I said, so you have your resistance now. This is the confrontation. This is the showdown. Okay, we're doing deportations. We're trying to get these numbers up. We're hiring more ICE agents. We're building more detention centers and increasing the amount of people that we can detain. Okay, we're getting to that point. We got this money from the big, beautiful bill last June. ICE is going to get an $80-90 billion cash infusion. Maybe we can get these numbers up. The real test, however, is when you meet that resistance, which is inevitable. It is inevitable that the left is going to try to shut this down. And predictably, there they were, rioting, protesting, doing these activities. And if there is resistance, you're going to have to shut down the resistance. Now it is transformed into a completely different environment. Now it's no longer ICE trying to arrest and detain and deport illegals. It's also all of the law enforcement, National Guard, local police, the rest of them trying to put down the insurrection. And now it's new challenges. You've got these, you could call them lone wolves. You could call it stochastic. That's the buzzword. But you've got these groups that are chasing law enforcement through the streets. Local law enforcement won't cooperate. You've got local government that's encouraging this, giving sanctuary not only to the illegals, but to the insurrectionists. So this is where it becomes a question of will. Can you now crush the protests? What is involved in this? People gotta die. Actually, people do have to die. I don't know how people don't expect this. How is this not reasonable? You want to deport 1 million people per year? How do you think you're going to do that without a George Floyd, without an Ahmaud Arbery? How do you think you're going to do that without some dirtbag who's going to try running and then gets shot in the face? It happens. 1 million people is a lot of people. And they don't want to go. And some of them are violent and armed, and some of them are not going to take it. We have to be okay with this, actually. And if then you have left-wing radicals who are totally insane, think about their perspective. In their mind, this is the Fourth Reich. They're playing Bella Ciao, and they've got their red berets on. They're LARPing as Hassan Piker is dressed like he's in the Chinese Communist Party, wearing his Ushanka. These people are LARPing like they are the Bolsheviks. They're LARPing like they are communist revolutionaries. You've got a Hollywood movie about Leonardo DiCaprio and his black girlfriend doing terrorist attacks on Border Patrol. Like, so what do you think is going to happen? Then on top of the illegals, you've got these nut jobs. They think they're fighting the Gestapo. They think it's a video game and they're going to raise the fist and they're going to be the resistance. Yes, some of them are going to die too. And I'm perfectly okay with that. You want to know how to not die as an illegal immigrant? Go home. You don't want to get shot in the face by ICE? Take your $3,000 in your plane ticket and go home. And if you want to take the chance, then when ICE arrives, surrender. Surrender. You're not here legally. You have no right to be here. This is our country, the citizens of the United States. This is our government. We have due process also, not just you. We have a right to have our country and protect our borders. We have a right to live in a country with people that are citizens, that we know who they are, that they pay taxes, that they're part of this social contract. You don't want to fight, you don't want to die, then surrender. And the same goes for left-wing agitators. If you don't want to die, stay home. Let law enforcement do their job. If you want to make your voice heard, do it legally. Go to a protest. No one has a problem with that. Go to a protest in the daytime with a permit in front of the government building and make your voice heard peacefully. Just like illegals don't have a right to be here, you don't have a right to run up on cops with a loaded gun in your waistband. Everybody knows that. And by the way, if any of us did this, if some kind of KKK Klansman or Nazi person or far-right extremist, whatever, if some radical on the right that the left hates ran up on cops with a gun in their waistband and they got shot, do you think the left would be saying, oh, I don't agree with them, however? Of course not. So this is part of it. You need to be ready for this. This is the first major test, and we're here. So Renée Good died, and I am perfectly okay with that. You're in your car, you're blocking ICE, you sped up when a cop is in front of you, mag dumped in the face, justified. Justice was served. Bye-bye, goodbye. Okay, now you have another one. Even his own parents have said. Alex Pretti, his parents said, in contrary to all the media says he's a nurse and everyone loved him and he was a great guy. You know what his own parents said? They said he's been acting really weird lately. He hasn't gone to work in months. He's fallen in with the wrong crowd. His behavior is really strange. That's who this guy is. He is there blowing his whistle, interfering with Border Patrol, with a loaded gun in his waistband, with multiple magazines in his car. Why would you need multiple magazines in your car? What are you really there to do? They want to portray this like this is Malala Yousafzai, like this is Gandhi, like this guy was being a conscientious objector, right? Like this was civil disobedience. He was sitting cross-legged in the street with his hands up, blowing a whistle. He had additional magazines in his car and brought a loaded gun. Why do you need additional magazines if you're a peaceful protester? And it is, by the way, it is shocking how naive people are being about this. The 2A crowd, conservatives, libertarians, fuck you. This is like George Floyd, Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin levels of delusion. It's like Trayvon Martin punching George Zimmerman in the face, gets his head blown off, and people go, he was a kid. He was a child. He had his Arizona iced tea and his Skittles. Remember that one? Then it was Mike Brown, the gentle giant. Remember the gentle giant who was 6'5", 250 pounds, tried to pull a gun off of a cop's holster? And everybody was looting convenience stores in his memory? The gentle giant, hands up, don't shoot. It's George Floyd all over again. And what do they want to do? Now they want to put body cams on ICE. It's no different. This is exactly the same thing. And it's no different. You don't want to get mag dumped in the face? Don't grab a cop's gun out of his holster. You don't want to get a knee on your neck? Don't rob a convenience store on fentanyl. You don't want to get shot in the face? Don't run over an ICE agent with your car. Don't show up to a protest. Physically confront ICE and get in an altercation with them with a loaded gun in your waistband. Shit happens. Sorry, you forfeited your life. So now, as we talked about yesterday, there's this extraordinary public pressure on Trump. Now it has turned into a thing. It has turned into a catastrophe, a disaster. And predictably, the media is all over this. And think about how this works, okay? I want you to understand fully the situation. Really get your arms around how fucked up this is. So our laws say that we have to bring in refugees as a country. Somalia collapses in the 90s. We got to bring them in. Why do we do this? Who knows? This isn't good for us. Fuck them. Who cares? You know, they're over there in Africa. Okay, let Ethiopia take them. Let Egypt take them. Let Saudi Arabia take them. Why do we have to absorb these people? What do we have to do with that? Somalia collapses on the other side of the planet. They're not even friendly to us. We got to take them in? What's Russia's obligation? What's China's obligation? What's the Middle East side? Everybody loves to talk about all these third worldists. They talk about how evil America is. America's this terror empire. I don't see Cuba and Venezuela and China taking these people in. No, we're the stupid country that our liberal system mandates we got to take these garbage people. That's our legal obligation. So we bring them here. They come here, as we talked about last night, they're stealing $8 billion from the state of Minnesota. That's your money. Don't you understand this? That is your money. You work 3 months out of the year for the government. Because if you're being taxed 25%, 33%, that is 3 to 4 months out of the year, every day, day in, day out, you're working to give that money to the government. And that government is then giving that money to these scammers. They go to the state and say, we need $500 million for autistic kids. We need $200 million to feed the kids. And they're spending that money on luxury cars. They're sending that money home to Somalia, to their extended clan, their extended family in another country. The government gets hip to this. The Democrat machine in Minneapolis gets wise, and they realize there is fraud. They start investigating. The beneficiaries of the fraud, the Somali community, start to threaten the state and say, if you take away all this fraud money, we will sue you for racism, which they did. The Somalians who came here as refugees are stealing our money for their own enrichment and largesse. They get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. They sue the state, which they are stealing from, for a civil rights violation for racism. So the Democrats cover it up. It takes a YouTuber to show up there and find out that this is fake to create this public pressure. Then ICE and DHS come in. ICE and DHS come in to investigate, and these activists that are from the city government, from the state government, I believe the lieutenant governor was in one of these group chats, city council members are in the group chats. These are the shock troops of the Democrat city machine. These are local cells of progressive and left-wing activists, DSA members. They've got their mitts in the Democrat machine. They then form up a signal group and they start chasing ICE. They start doxing ICE officers, doxing their license plates, showing up to interfere in their operations. They're, in some cases, rioting outside their hotels, outside the facilities. It is, at this point, that a couple of them get a little bit too carried away and they get shot and die. Then the media comes in. Now in comes the left-wing media, in comes the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN and the rest of them to shove their cameras everywhere and say, this is the Gestapo. Now Hollywood comes in. And all the celebrities are on Instagram and on TikTok talking about, we need to be good activists. We need to spread awareness. This is the modern day Fourth Reich. It's an ICE agent shooting an unarmed citizen in front of the flag. How fucked up is this? Every step of the way. We should have never taken the refugees. We should have never let them steal. You should have never covered it up or been guilt-tripped about racism. We should be deporting them. These agitators should be imprisoned. Now, all the pressure is on the administration. But this is the showdown. And it's a showdown between this left-wing machine and the people of America. That's what it is. It is this left-wing machine. It is the machine politics of the city, which drives the politics of the whole state. It's the machine politics of the city, which drives the commerce and the votes of that entire state, Chicago and Illinois, Minneapolis and Minnesota, New York City and New York, LA and San Fran and California, Nova in Virginia. It is the machine politics of the city with their shock troop, progressive DSA people on the ground, with these immigrant communities, which supply the votes, which supply part of the votes and the activists and the voting bloc. And I'm sure the fraud that they are committing, there's some outside of the country help with this. And it's also an inside job. There's people in the Democrat Party that are skimming off the top. And then there are accomplices nationally in the media, in Hollywood, these other loci of power for the Democrats. And all of these people are driving this left-wing politics. It's purely corruption. It is something that is extractive. It is an extractive, parasitic enterprise where they make the country worse by bringing in people that really do not benefit the country at all. It's not beneficial for Americans to have Somalians, but it's beneficial for them as politicians, for their grift. They're degrading the country by siphoning money out of it. That's what the government does, is it removes capital from the economy, and then it redistributes it, reallocates it to scammers. And so the money is stolen, and it's all debt. I mean, all these states and the federal government are in debt. So you're taking productive capital out of the economy. It's more debt. You're giving it to scammers. And the scammers are in league with the politicians. So you get this totally corrupt system. And this is how a country dies. This is how the government becomes inefficient, loses efficacy. This is how the country becomes bankrupt. We run out of money. This is how the public loses faith in its institutions, civic institutions, government institutions, in the media. So now there's no trust between the government and those that are governed. This is how you kill a society. And so don't get me wrong, Trump is super corrupt too. But this is one thing that is good. You have a lot of white people. In 2024, 80% of Trump voters were white. The white people get together, they vote for Trump to end this nightmare, get these people out, stop the grift. ICE shows up, and there is, understand, an immune response. This is the convulsion of the Democrat machine. They're freaking out. The DOJ comes into Minneapolis and says, give us your voting rolls. They freak out. They say, we're not giving up our voter rolls. Why do you think that is? The Trump administration is effectively just doing a half-assed job of cleaning up the corruption. They're doing a half-assed job at deportations. They're doing a half-assed job at election integrity. But even shining a light, even slightly, on some of this stuff shows just how corrupt the system is. Minneapolis is convulsing because there goes their voting bloc. There goes their voting fraud. There goes their welfare fraud. Tim Walz isn't even running for re-election, even though he was planning to, because of the extent of this cover-up. And if that's going on in Minneapolis, you know that is going on to a much larger extent everywhere else. This is Minnesota we're talking about. If that's going on in Minneapolis, what's going on in Chicago? What's going on in New York? What's going on in LA, in DC? What's going on in every other city? This is our country. This is the extractive, corrupt enterprise of left-wing politics, of mass immigration, welfare, and entitlement fraud. This is what's happening. Now, Trump shows up for the showdown. Like I said, a couple of people get killed. This is just to tell you, all of this is justified. You know, what level of force do you think is acceptable? You want to deport 1 million people per year. We're deporting 250,000 and a couple of people died. If you think that is too heavy-handed and extreme, how are we going to get those numbers up 4 times? And don't tell me you're opposed to this unless you have an answer to that question. For all these people out there that are saying, I support mass deportations, but this is too heavy-handed. No, you don't get to say that. Sorry, no. You don't get to say that. If you are truly in favor of mass deportations, if you truly understand the stakes, then you tell us how we're going to deport 1 million people per year without some of these pieces of shit getting killed. You tell me. You owe us an explanation. Otherwise, you are just a bitch. Seriously, think about it. You do not actually get this privilege of sitting back in your armchair, you know, whether you're a podcaster, influencer, whatever, and saying, you know, I want mass deportations, but not like that. Mass deportations, it's not a question of whether they need to happen, if they're going to happen. It is essential. It is imperative for the continuity of our country. We don't have a country if we don't have law and order. Law and order has no credibility. If you tell people, well, you got in the end zone, you're safe. You know, you cross first base, you're good, right? It's good. These illegal immigrants leaped over the border under Biden. Oh, okay, well, you made it before the buzzer went off. I guess it's good. No, sorry. It is imperative that every single illegal alien get deported. Otherwise, we have no credibility as a society. We have no laws. We have no government. The native people have no sovereignty. Who gets to determine who is allowed in the United States? If it's not the native citizens, then who is it? It's the foreigners? A foreign-born, foreign national who is in some village in El Salvador. They make their way over into America and they say, I get to determine who's allowed in America. That's not a country. So they gotta go. It is a necessity. Otherwise, don't have a country. Otherwise, we are ruled by communist radicals and illegal foreign nationals. We're ruled by everybody else. We have no sovereignty. We have no law and order. We have no society. So these are the stakes. You're either ignorant or you're lying. If you understand that we have to deport 1 million people or more per year, it is your responsibility to tell us how we're going to do this without a fat bitch getting shot once in a while. Seriously. I don't see any other way. These deportations have to increase. They have to expand by many multiples, by at least 4 times. If it's going to increase 4 times, the left is going to resist. We have to stomp them into the ground. We have to crush them with a closed fist. We have to deploy overwhelming force to shut it down so they don't even try anything. And yeah, some people are going to need to be made an example of, to scare them all off and say, look, you don't ram ICE vehicles with your car. You don't run up on a law enforcement officer with a loaded gun and extra magazines in your waistband. You don't do that. It has deadly consequences. People need to know that. I'm sick of hearing about it. But this is the situation we find ourselves in now. And so now the media is broadcasting this everywhere, and the pressure is particularly acute because we are in the midterms. It is now 2026. This is no coincidence. Now think of the politics. The Republicans have a 3-vote majority in the House of Representatives. Historically speaking, for the past 100 years, the party which has the incumbent president always loses seats in the House during the midterms. That is like an historical rule, going back to like 1932 or 1928. There's been only one other election where the party with the sitting president gains seats in the House. I believe it was Obama that was the exception to this rule. So if that is the historical rule, and if we only have a 3-vote majority, if we're almost certainly going to lose seats, then that means we're going to lose the House. If you lose 3 seats, we lose the House. Historically, we always lose seats. We're going to lose the House. So Republicans are very aware of this, and their donors and the beneficiaries of Republican patronage, they're very aware of this. If we lose the House, Republicans, or if it's bad in the midterms and we lose the House, Republicans lose control. And then the Democrats are going to shut everything down. So this gravy train that is happening right now, all these beneficiaries of the graft that's happening in the Trump administration, whether it's the crypto guys, the tech bros, some of these defense contractors, construction companies, all these people that have been benefiting from the corruption of the Republicans, the gravy train stops. Democrats are going to get in. They're going to impeach everybody, investigate everybody, subpoena everybody, and then all this corruption that's enriching everybody stops. And then there's the political aspect. Republicans have this agenda that gets shut down. If Democrats gain control of one chamber and you have a divided government, they're going to shut it down for the next 2 years. So Republicans are freaking out. We need to keep the House. We need to do everything necessary to avoid losing even a handful of seats. It's in this context now that you have this big scandal and there's all this pressure. That brings us to Trump's response. So this guy gets killed. Now, what does Trump do about it? He is totally capitulating and totally surrendering and totally backing down. I'm going to read through. This is a series of developments since the weekend. First and foremost, Trump says that ICE is withdrawing from Minneapolis after the killing. This is from the New York Times. It says, quote, Gregory Bovino, the Border Patrol official in charge of President Trump's on-the-ground immigration enforcement in Minneapolis, is expected to leave the city, according to 2 U.S. officials. Some of the federal agents in the city are also expected to begin leaving on Tuesday, Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis said after a phone call on Monday with President Trump. After 2 days of blowback over the shooting and his own attacks on the victim, Mr. Trump struck a more cooperative tone on Monday, first by dispatching Tom Homan to the state and then describing in a social media post a good call with Governor Tim Walz, whom he had also blamed for the shooting. He said that they had been on a similar wavelength. So they're pulling out their top guy. Do you know what that is? That's a scalp. That's what that is. Trump got everybody all ramped up. We're going into Chicago. We're going into New York. We're going to deport everybody. If you are illegal, you are going back. It is not negotiable. Take your plane ticket or we will remove you. Remember all that tough talk a year ago? Remember when Tom Homan said in January, we're coming to Chicago. We're coming to every major. You better pack your bag. Remember that? They got everybody all jazzed up. And you got Stephen Miller and Tom Homan and Greg Bovino beating their chest on TV, defending the actions and the policy of the administration. Greg Bovino became a symbol of ICE brutality. It's all over social media. On Instagram, on TikTok, they find this guy. I'm talking about the left-wing agitators. They find this guy, whether he's in Target, at a gas station, at a restaurant, and they surround him, and they shove their phones in his face, and they threaten to fight him, and they scream at him and swear at him. And he is a representative as a white male, as a gruff, older, tough white guy of ICE brutality, of nativism, white supremacy, Trumpism. Now, after this protester gets killed, Trump yanks him out of the city. That is a scalp for the left. That's a victory. You have handed them a severed head on a silver platter. You've said, please, we surrender. Here's our sacrificial offering. Now, what do you think this does? If you're some piece of shit progressive that is in Minneapolis, this is a victory. You go out and say, we did it. Keep the pressure up. The sacrifice of Renée Good and the other guy will not be in vain. It's working. We're chasing ICE out of the city. We're chasing Border Patrol out. We're escalating. We're laying down our lives. This is like the resistance. That stupid bitch on Twitter, she said, remember in Star Wars when they said the resistance will be remembered for generations? This is how they think of this. And in a word, what this does is it emboldens them. It's like I said the other night, this is a confidence game. It's a war, it's a game. And it has a lot to do with confidence. You have emboldened them. You have just given them the realization that if they keep showing up, you will back down. You will make concessions. You will retreat. If we chase ICE, if we make their jobs hell, if we get in their face, they will make mistakes. If we show up in the streets, if we put pressure on Target and Marriott and all the brands that are involved in this in one way or another, they will blink. They will back down. And if you think you're winning, you make more sacrifices. You push harder. If you think the chi of the battle is on your side, you're going to keep pushing. That is what Trump has now invited. Not only this, Greg Bovino gets yanked. Then Trump undercuts him and says openly, well, we're going to back down. Also from the Times, it says, quote, President Trump said on Tuesday, quote, we're going to de-escalate a little bit when it comes to his immigration crackdown in Minneapolis. The president also acknowledged the aggressive tactics of Gregory Bovino, the Border Patrol official known for his confrontational style who was pulled out of Minneapolis. In an interview with Fox News, Trump described him as a pretty out there kind of guy. He said, in some cases it's good. Maybe it's not good here. On Capitol Hill, the top 3 House Democrats came out in support of an effort to impeach Kristi Noem. Republicans were also critical. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina told reporters Ms. Noem should be fired. Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska struck a similar note. It's over, okay? You gave up. You gave the game away. Not only do you give the left a scalp, but you undercut your own guy. Now, what does this do for your own side? So you have just told the left, if the left pushes really, really hard, if they lay down their lives, we will eventually back out. We will withdraw. We will surrender. What have you told your own side? You've told your own side, if you make a mistake, if you make an error, I will not have your back. I will pull you out. I will put you on the bench, and then I'll throw you under the bus in the media. So what does this do to the psychology of the ICE officers? You're asking ICE officers to go and fight these animals and potentially die, potentially get shot in the face. They're being put in an impossible situation. They go out there, they're being chased, they're being harassed, they're being overwhelmed. Protesters are blowing whistles. It's a confusing, dangerous environment when you can't hear, when you can't see. You got people running up to you, confronting you. And now what you have is doubt, hesitancy, reluctance, second guessing. If you're an ICE agent, okay, we're in the freezing cold in Minneapolis. We're chasing these beaners. I happen to be a beaner, so I can say that. We're chasing these beaners around. We're chasing the beans. These shithead radicals get in the streets, blowing their whistles. They're armed with assault rifles, running up on you. You start to wonder, well, if I kill this guy, I'm going to live, but what's going to happen to me? Am I going to get hanged? Am I going to be investigated? Am I going to be prosecuted for murder? Is Trump going to have my back? if I don't shoot this guy, I might die right now. So what does this do to the average ICE agent? They're demoralized. They're less willing to do their job. I'm not going to show up to Spring Hill Suites in Marriott, a $150 a night hotel, where I'm going to be watching outside my window as a mob of people is formed to dox and kill me, and then go out in the freezing cold in my car, get chased around in a dangerous high-speed chase by radicals, then try to do my duty, have armed people confronting me if I don't know that the administration is going to have my back. If our commander has been withdrawn from the city, if our own administration is telling us we made a mistake. So this is why I said Trump, he is what he is. He is not that guy. He is not the guy to do this job because he is weak. He is weak. He lacks follow through. He never follows through on anything, and he has no strategy. It's all tactics. It's all short term. What is going to play well today? What is going to play well this week? What are people saying on Twitter? Someone who is that reactive, someone who is that short term in their thinking with such a short time horizon cannot accomplish anything that requires a sustained effort through difficulty and lack of popularity. Can't do it. So Trump goes up on TV and says, we're pulling our commander. We're giving the left a scalp. He admits that we're flawed. He says, oh, we made a mistake and this guy is too extreme and we need to de-escalate. So you're demoralizing your own people. You're admitting fault and saying, we are the bad guys. You're emboldening the enemy. They think they have a victory. Then add insult to injury. The real leadership is the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem. ICE and Border Patrol are under DHS. Now Republicans want Kristi Noem to go. Democrats want her impeached. Republican senators are saying she's doing a terrible job. We need to question her. We're going to fire her. So you're not standing by your people. You need a united front. You need to stick up for your people. Even if Kristi Noem is terrible, and she is, you need to have her back because she's your girl right now. Greg Bovino, maybe he's too intense. You tell him to chill out behind the scenes and you keep him in Minneapolis just on account of. That's what you should have done. You keep him in the city. Maybe you don't parade him around in the streets, but you keep him there just to say that he's there. You don't have underlings telling the media that he's been fired, and then the White House comes out and says, no, he hasn't been fired, but we did withdraw him. You don't certainly have Trump on TV and say he's out there. No, you leave him in the city, at least for the next week, just to have him there. And you back him up. You go on TV and said he's a patriot. And your girl, Kristi Noem, she is a fucking idiot, but you know what? She's your girl right now. And she's the head honcho running the operation. You got to back her up. You got to whip the Republicans and say, we back up our administration. You got to get out ahead of it and say, Kristi Noem is doing a great job. Greg Bovino's a patriot. We're not going anywhere. Our answer is, you don't want to get in trouble. Greg Bovino's a patriot. We're not going anywhere. Our answer is, you don't want to get in trouble, then don't attack our law enforcement. You reframe it. Trump is in Iowa talking about the economy. You should be in Minneapolis rallying the troops. They don't have any fight in them, though. It's like I said, this requires total focus, total mobilization, marshal every resource. They don't want to fight it out. Too messy, too ugly. It's in the midterms. Oh, the opinion polling's not so good. We want to get off the subject. We're going to make a half-ass effort to change the conversation. They don't even know what their line is. First, they come out and call him a terrorist. Then they come out and say, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. First, they come out and say, he's a bad guy. Now they say, well, it's a tragedy, but also he had a gun. Okay, so which is it? This isn't your first rodeo. It gets better. Now Stephen Miller is piling on Kristi Noem. Hey, and by the way, where is Stephen Miller, huh? Hey, plan-trusting idiots. Hey, Trump cucks. Hey, cuck chair Trump supporters. Hey, plan trusting idiots. Hey, bottom feeding scum. Where's the hero Stephen Miller, huh? Where's our number one Jew? Where's our base Jew, huh? Where'd he go? Remember all that propaganda? Oh, Stephen Miller is just autistically thinking about deportations all the time. Really? Where is he now? Because I thought he was supposed to be the next president. I thought he was one of those remarkable Jews that is an ally of the Nazis. I thought Stephen Miller was the guy who was really behind it and all these speeches. Where's our guy? Where's he in the middle of all this? Huh? I don't see him on TV. Haven't seen him. Haven't seen him after he posted that on Twitter, and then I don't know, they must have slapped him behind the scenes. Where'd he go? Where's our tough guy running the White House? Where is he? You tell me. Are we trusting the plan? Stephen Miller, if you can hear us, he's our base Jew. Oh, I love how he's just always autistically thinking about how to deport illegals. He has so much aura. I guess that Stephen Miller's not here today, huh? It's almost like this is precisely what happened 8 years ago, in 2018. Stephen Miller is now moving behind the scenes to put all the blame on Kristi Noem, to isolate her and make her the fall girl. This is what he says, according to Politico. It says, quote, White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller is distancing himself from Homeland Security amid widespread outrage over the killing of Alex Pretti by immigration agents in Minneapolis. Miller, an architect of President Trump's hardline immigration enforcement campaign, said that his initial remarks, including labeling Pretti as a terrorist, were based on information from DHS. It's their fault. He also said the agency may not have been following White House instructions with its overall handling of the enforcement operation in Minnesota. Because you see, Miller is the Deputy Chief of Staff of the White House, acting Deputy Chief of Staff, Strategic Advisor. So Miller's coming from the White House. Homeland Security is down the hall and to the left. So if this dirtbag gets shot and Miller accidentally calls him a terrorist, Miller says, oh, well, that's because Homeland Security isn't following the guidance of the White House. I misspoke because the White House got bad information from Homeland Security. Nice. Courageous. Heroic. What a hero. Serves you right. You trusted a Jew. Okay? I don't care what his name is. Stephen Miller. Doesn't matter. He's a Jew. Okay? In a statement, Miller said that the White House told DHS to use extra personnel sent to the state from Customs and Border Protection to keep protesters away from the fugitive apprehension operations, suggesting the confrontation that led to Pretti's death violated those instructions. He said, we are evaluating why the CBP team may not have been following that protocol. What a worm. What a snake. What a disgusting rat. Filth. So look at your White House. Look at it. Dread it. Run from it. Where did it bring you? Back to me. Back to the Groypers. Yeah. You trusted the plan. Serves you right. Dread it. Run from it. Destiny arrives all the same. Where did it lead you? Look at your White House, you. Look at your White House, you. Look at it. Look at it. You kill one idiot. You kill one little left-wing protester. Who cares? And the White House is going crazy. The administration's going crazy. We're de-escalating. They're yanking their guy back, throwing him under the bus. Kristi Noem is getting fed to the wolves. Stephen Miller is distancing himself. They don't even know what their line is about the whole thing. Well, it's a tragedy, but he shouldn't have had a gun. Well, he's a terrorist. I got bad intel. Oh, I never heard that. Your golden age. And you know what's really funny to me? You know what's hilarious? Excuse me. In the first month of 2025, everybody was saying, This second Trump administration is different. It's different this time. Look at how fast they're moving. They're competent. There's no leaks. There's so much energy. They're moving so quickly. It's a blitz. The left doesn't have time to counter what they're doing. They're flooding the zone. They're doing 100 things in a day. The left can barely keep up. You remember this? I remember in the first few months, because I read the news, that the left was literally struggling to keep up. And they were talking about how they were struggling to keep up, talking about how it was demoralizing, saying we can literally barely keep up with how many awful things Trump is doing every single day, and that's impeding our ability to counter it. Now look at it. Look at the infighting. Trump is throwing Bovino under the bus. An underling said he was fired. The press secretary says actually he wasn't fired, they're just pulling him out. Trump goes on the news and says he's out there. Republican senators want to fire Kristi Noem. They're working with the Democrats. Stephen Miller is blaming Kristi Noem for the whole thing and for the bad statement that he himself made. He's probably getting a talking to behind the scenes. Trump in the White House is saying we need to back down. What a disaster. What a joke. This is supposed to be a golden age. This is supposed to be executive power. We could just do things. It's a disaster. They can't fight because they're not organized. Like, you can't even get to the battlefield because none of these people are serious. Stephen Miller is a craven political opportunist. He is a craven, unscrupulous political opportunist and a Jew. He does not care about mass deportations. He is a smug, aloof, flippant, self-aggrandizing, opportunistic Jew. And he was in the first term, and he is in the second term. He is a joke. Kristi Noem is a joke. Look at her. She goes out to these things in a costume. She went to Spirit Halloween and got your sexy Border Patrol costume. She's over there with her plate carrier. She's an idiot. Everyone says that she's sleeping with Corey Lewandowski, who's really running the show. She's just straight up an idiot. She cares more about anti-Semitism than mass deportations. And team, they were never going to bring us to the promised land. This is the team that's going to do the deportations. This is the team that's going to marshal every government resource to deliver the largest deportation operation in U.S. history. Not a chance. These people are fools, and they are incompetent and disorganized, no loyalty, and they don't even want it bad enough. And now they're at each other's throats. It gets better. This is from Nick Sorter, who's on the ground in Minneapolis. According to him, Border Patrol has been given new orders not to arrest non-criminal illegal aliens. Nick Sorter, he's on the ground doing all the coverage of the left-wing agitators. He said he spoke to 2 Border Patrol agents, and they each independently said the new plan is they're not going to deport non-criminal illegal aliens anymore. So remember we talked about that distinction from the Obama administration? Now we have Obama's deportation policy. We have deported fewer people than Obama, and now we have the Obama deportation doctrine, which is if you're merely here illegally, we are not going to mess with you. We're only going to deport the criminals, and that's what everybody is saying. This is from the Republicans, also from, I believe this is The Hill. It says, quote, President Trump's aggressive deportation campaign is making Republicans uneasy. As the midterms approach, GOP lawmakers, candidates, strategists, and people close to the White House are warning that the administration's mass deportation policy and the wall-to-wall coverage of enforcement operations, arrest of U.S. citizens, and clashes between protesters and federal officials could cost them their razor-thin House majority. It's reading that paragraph, I think I said that verbatim in 2024, and now it has come to pass fully. As midterms approach, GOP lawmakers, candidates, strategists, people in the White House are warning that mass deportations and the wall-to-wall coverage of all the chaos could cost them their razor-thin House majority. If only somebody told us that that is how it would play out. Oh, wait, I did. I said specifically this would happen. I said in 2026, it'll be a repeat of 2018. You're heading into the midterms. I said even those words. I said there will be wall-to-wall coverage of the atrocities, the crying kids, the rest of it. I said, and the administration will back down, and then that will be it. Here we are. It says the administration's forceful approach across the U.S. risks repelling the swing voters who fueled Trump's return to the White House, but are increasingly wary of how the president is implementing a central campaign promise. Further complementing the issue is that Republicans are split on the best way to address that eroding support, with some in the party viewing it as a messaging problem. Others argue that the administration's policy itself is driving voter concerns. Representative Dan Newhouse from Washington, a Republican, said, if we don't change our approach, it will have negative effects on the midterms for sure. Maria Salazar, Republican from Florida, said, ICE should focus on the bad hombres. The bad hombres, that's it, not the cleaning ladies. One thing is the gardeners, another thing is the gangsters. One thing is the cooks, the other is the coyotes. A person close to the White House, granted anonymity to speak candidly, said Republicans have to keep the focus on criminal arrests, public safety, and the Trump administration's success in securing the southern border, which are more popular with voters across the board. Otherwise, the person worried the GOP is losing support with moderate Republicans, independents, Latinos, and young voters. Well. Say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. I said this exactly in 2024. Specifically, I said, I'm not voting for Trump. I said, because this mass deportation thing is never going to happen. I said, and if you read between the lines, they're telling you that. Whenever Vance and Trump were pushed during the election on the policy, they would say, we're going to prioritize the bad hombres, the criminals, then we'll worry about everybody else. Well, you know what? They've been saying that for 15 years. Everybody has been saying that for 15 years. That is the new status quo. That is the new consensus, which is mass deportations means amnesty for everyone that isn't bothering anybody and deportations for murderers and rapists. Okay, well, as it should be. I mean, obviously, it should be a given that you deport a murderer. We should deport everybody. But that's the consensus since like 2010 or something. And so Trump and Vance, during the election, they would say this. They would say, well, we'll just worry about that other stuff later. We'll build the wall, we'll deport the criminals, then we'll worry about everybody later. That is code for we're never deporting those other people. That's code for we're going to secure the border, we're going to deport the criminals, and then we're going to kick the can down the road on everybody else. It'll be somebody else's problem. That's what they meant. And if you want to deport millions of people, you need a lot of money for that. And you need serious people. And like we talked about before, they never at any time indicated that they were going to bring that level of seriousness to the table. They didn't treat mass deportations like it would be this central part of the administration, which it would need to be. They were treating it like it was one among other things. So we knew that. And I told you, I said, you don't have 4 years to get deportations up. I said, first of all, we got to hit the ground running. I said, we got to hit the ground running. How we do in 2025 is going to tell us how we'll do in the future. In 2025, there'll be no resistance. I said, so if you want deportations, you got to get them started early. And if they don't get started early, I said, that's a very bad sign. Because in the midterms, in 26, the Republicans will be very averse. They'll be very shy, gun shy about doing any of this stuff. Because you'll have the media playing it up. And if you're deporting tons of people, it's going to be contentious. It's going to be controversial. The media is going to shove their cameras all over it. And it's going to turn into a thing. And there'll be extraordinary and acute public pressure on Trump to stop it. I said, so you really got to set the precedent in 25. If you really want deportations, they're going to happen in that first year. I said, because then 26 happens, there's going to be this pressure, and then you lose the midterms, then they're going to shut it down. I told you this is exactly how it would play out, and this is exactly what is now happening. And mark my words, mass deportations are over. It's done. I've seen enough. I'm calling it. It's done. Because, and I said this before, we've seen this movie already. This is precisely what happened in 2018. In Trump's first term, he wins the election. After the election, illegal immigration plummets because foreign nationals anticipate that there will be enforcement. In other words, they don't even try to cross the border because they think with Trump in charge, they're going to get caught. Slowly, they figure out the border isn't all that secure, so they start coming in anyway. By September 2017, you start getting caravans from the Northern Triangle, these huge inflows of thousands of people, 20,000 people in one go, from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. They're pouring in. Trump starts talking about an amnesty, talking about DACA, the rest of it. Now, Trump, with Tom Homan and with Stephen Miller, the same cast of characters, how do they shut down these caravans? They implement the child separation policy. If illegal immigrants cross the border with kids, unaccompanied minors, under catch and release, we have to pick them up and bring them into the country because we can't detain the children with the adults. So this was a huge loophole. You talk about loopholes in our immigration laws. Unaccompanied minors are a huge source of catch and release. They're a huge part of the loophole. Because if an adult comes in with a little kid, you can't put them in the same place because kids can't be with criminal adults. So we have to pick them up, scoop them up, bring them into the inside of the country, and we give them a court date and we say, we'll see you later. Huge part of the problem. So Trump, Homan, and Stephen Miller, and at that time, Kirstjen Nielsen, another woman at DHS, they implement family separation. And they say, we're going to detain the kids away from the adults, and that way we can keep them at the border. We can apprehend them at the border, we can detain them at the border, and we can adjudicate their asylum request without releasing them. Famously, you know the rest is history. And for those that got red-pilled after COVID, for all these plan-trusting idiots that woke up after COVID, let me tell you what happened next. Throughout the summer of 2018, you had wall-to-wall coverage of kids in cages from the media. Kids in cages, kids in cages, kids in... Those were the magic words. And it was every day of the week, any time of the day, in the New York Times, on CNN, on NBC, kids in cages. And they portrayed it then as they are now, that this is a concentration camp. It's the Gestapo. What kind of president puts little kids in cages? And the Trump administration tried to fight it at first. They said, well, Obama built them. Obama did it too. You know, they tried the rhetorical pivot. And then, and I know this firsthand because I know people from the administration, and I've heard this from them. In the summer, Trump picks up the phone, calls Stephen Miller and says, Stephen, we got to shut it down. We got to stop this. We're getting killed out here. And they reversed the policy. And you got another caravan in the spring of 2018. You got another caravan in the fall of 2018. And in May and June of 2019, after the midterms, you had the highest total number of southern border apprehensions in those months in 20 years. You had more illegal immigrants cross the border in May and June than any other May and June since the year 2000, since Bill Clinton was president. I guess it would have been George W. Well, no, it was Bill Clinton at that time. Okay? That's what happened in 2018. And I said this in 2024. I said exactly that story. I said, this is how it's going to go. You think you're going to get mass deportations. They're going to try them. They will try in vain. They'll get some people out. I said, but the second that the midterms start, the cameras are going to go. You're going to get the same program. Trump is going to back down because he's not serious. And it's the same cast of characters. This time he got Trump, Homan, Miller, and instead of Kirstjen Nielsen, he got Kristi Noem. Now here we are. And how many of these statements have we gotten just this month? In the first week of December, we get a planted story that says Trump administration officials are wobbling. They're getting nervous. They're second-guessing themselves. We get a planted story that says anonymous sources in the White House say that we need to recalibrate and re-strategize on immigration enforcement, and Trump doesn't like what he's seeing. Then a week later, Trump himself goes to a press conference and says, we don't want to deport the people at the luncheonettes, which is kind of like an anachronism. We don't want to deport the people that are on the farms. We only want to focus on the criminals. That was 2. Now we're getting all this. Now we get all this. Now we get Bovino out. Border Patrol is being told only detain the criminals. You get Kristi Noem is going to get tossed out. She's getting thrown under the bus, isolated. Maybe they'll kick her out after the World Cup. Who knows? Maybe she'll go sooner. Republican senators want to impeach her. Trump goes out and says, this is really bad stuff. We need to de-escalate. There will be more of it. It's over. It's over. Because here's what it would take for it to not be over. If we deported 230,000 in 2025, we need to 4x those numbers to get to 1 million, which is the low end of what we need. You need to 4x that at the minimum. At the minimum, okay? That's low. You think that in the midterms, with all this going on, we're going to 4x? Triple? Double? You're lucky if you even get as many. You will be lucky if you even get that many in 2026 and it's not lower. It might be the same. It might be a little bit more. It could be even fewer in 2026. And then, you know what's going to happen? They're going to lose the midterms anyway. I can't wait. So they are going to totally cave and capitulate because Trump always chickens out on everything. He chickens out with China. He chickens out with Russia. He chickens out with trade. He chickens out with Greenland, with Europe, with this. He chickens out on everything. Trump will totally capitulate. He's going to deliver more scalps on a silver platter to the left, scalp delivery service. Here's Bovino. Here's Miller. Miller will probably stay. Here's Kristi Noem. And then we're going to lose the midterms anyway. And then, here's when it really gets good. Mark my words. January 2027, the new Congress is seated. We have a divided government. Day one, Democrats are putting up articles of impeachment against Trump, against Hegseth. They are going to subpoena Kristi Noem. They're going to subpoena all these people. They're going to call a subcommittee. They're going to grind everything to a halt. We're going to find out about all these crimes. We're going to find out about all the corruption and the stealing and the graft in the administration. And the deportations are not going to go up. It's going to be it. And if Trump couldn't do it, who's going to do it? If Trump, winning the popular vote, winning the electoral college landslide on a platform of mass deportations, if he can't do it, who's going to do it? J.D. Vance? Don't make me laugh. Ron DeSantis? Marco Rubio? Who's going to do it then? If Trump can't stand up to these people, if Trump can't sell it, if he can't deliver after being the president already for 4 years and being shot and prosecuted and the rest of it, who's going to do it? And you know what else? This is going to destroy popular support for immigration enforcement. It's just over. Okay? Trump is a disaster. He will continue sinking and sliding, and it's going to take all of it with him. All the good stuff is going to go down with him. Nationalism, nativism, immigration enforcement, all the good stuff is going to go down with him. The left will seize the initiative. The left will seize the initiative on restraining Israel, ending the wars, the Epstein files, abolishing ICE, whatever, left-wing populism, affordability, housing, healthcare. Well, I told you so. I told you it'd be like this. Now we're here. That's why I didn't vote. I told you we're going to get a war with Iran, no mass deportations, and corporate tax cut. And we're there. We got all three. Trifecta. We're sailing to Iran right now, war gaming across the Middle East. The deportations are cooked after this. They're cooked after the midterms. And we got the tax cut extension last year. So, happy? Got what you voted for? Now, here's the last thing, and then we'll move on about that. I was saying these things in 2024. Everything I'm saying now, people might say, oh, I can't believe. Some people are saying, oh, well, that was obvious. I see all these people that should die saying, well, that was an obvious prediction. Anyone could have predicted that. No, nobody predicted that. Nobody did. I lived it. In 2024, everybody attacked me for saying this. Specifically, what did they say? Everything I'm saying now, I was saying then. I've been absolutely consistent. Absolutely, totally consistent on this. 100%. I didn't vote. So I put my money where my mouth is. And I lost money for going against Trump, actually. Now people say, oh, it was always obvious. Oh, everyone could have seen this coming. Well, when I was saying this in 2024, do you know what right-wing influencers said about me? It was specific. They said that after January 6th, I cut a deal with the FBI, the Biden DOJ, to evade prosecution, and in return, I was going to shill for the Democrats. That's what they said. So when in 2024, I warned everybody, I was warning you, and I'm right. In 24, when I told you, take it to the bank, we're going to war with Iran. They're not going to do mass deportations. You're only getting a tax cut. They're going to increase H-1Bs. When I said this in 2024, it was obvious then, just as it is now happening today. People said, why is he saying this? Oh, the only reason he could say this is because he's a Fed. There's a conspiracy. He took a deal. Now, what does this say about that narrative? What does that tell you? Something very interesting is going on, which is that there's a lot of money riding on Trump getting elected in 2024. Tucker Carlson campaigned for Trump. Candace Owens campaigned for Trump. They all campaigned for Trump. I guess they overlooked all this stuff. They didn't see it coming. They didn't know. I was the only one, not Candace, not Tucker, not none of these people. I was the only one that said, I'm going to take the radical and dramatic and very risky step of telling everybody don't vote. And I took a big career hit for that. People said I was finished. Close friends turned on me. Even my family. My mom called me up. She's like, I don't get what you're doing right now. It was universal. Everybody was pro-Trump in 24. Everybody on the right wing. Nobody was sticking it out. I have maybe 15 friends, and half of them were not with that. Half of them were working for the campaign. They said I wasn't being loyal to the president. These are people that I've had a birthday party with. These are people that I've broken bread with that I know. So believe me when I tell you, it was not obvious back then. Nobody was saying it. Tucker was at the RNC. Candace supported it. And for being right, I was called the Fed. Now, what does this tell you? It tells you something very interesting. If Trump never got elected, Larry Ellison would have never acquired TikTok. Harvard would never have gotten a Jewish president. Columbia would have never gotten a Jewish president, as they just did recently. The Zionists wouldn't have shut down the universities. They wouldn't have taken control of TikTok. Maybe they wouldn't have taken control of CBS. They might get Warner Brothers. Would have never went to war with Iran, or if we did, it would have been the Democrats. And they called me a Fed for saying this. Really, really interesting. So who was being paid to say that? Who among the Republican influencers was being paid? Tucker Carlson was insinuating that constantly. He said, I'm David Duke. He said, I hug the Republicans. Then he's mad that I attacked the Republicans. Wasn't that funny? Tucker said that I'm like David Duke, and I was deployed by the CIA to wrap my arms around Republicans and poison them by proximity, to hurt them by association. I'm supposed to make myself to be the most radical guy, and then by publicly supporting a Republican, I'm going to tarnish their image. But then he also said, if you're America First, why are you attacking Republicans who are America First? So, okay, so which is it? If I'm friendly with somebody, I'm trying to torpedo them. If I'm attacking them, I'm a hypocrite. If I'm friendly with them, oh, well, you're just trying to hurt them with your image. If I'm attacking them, oh, well, you're supposed to be America First. Why don't you support these people? And then when I rightly predicted that Trump was going to be a disaster, I said all these arguments then. It wasn't a guess. It wasn't a gut feeling. I laid out these arguments then. I remember the data points. I said Nikki Haley went to Israel for Miriam Adelson, endorsed Trump, and then there was a quid pro quo between Adelson and Trump to promise him a $100 million check. May 2024. Google it. How did Vance become the nominee? How did I predict that Vance would be the VP in May? Because somebody told me. Because Vance connected Little Tech to Trump. Jacob Hellberg cut an $830,000 check to the Joint Campaign Committee in March. In June, Vance brokered a deal where David Sachs would host a fundraiser at his house with all the Little Tech money, Andreessen Horowitz and Sean McGuire and all these other guys, and they were going to back Trump to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how you knew Vance was going to be the guy. And when Trump appeared on the All In podcast with David Sachs a week later, that's when he said he would staple green cards to diplomas. When Vance became the VP at the RNC in July 2024, he sat with an interview for Sean Hannity, his first interview since getting the nod. Do you know what the first thing he said was? We need to punch Iran in the face really hard. In the spring of 2024, he went to an anti-war think tank, the Quincy Institute, which promulgates the restraint doctrine created by Barry Posen. And he said, we need an America First foreign policy that is pro-Israel, meaning we need to give Israel what they need to bomb Iran, and we need to work with Israel on missile defense and an Abraham alliance. So all the receipts are there. We knew this. When Vance and Trump were questioned about mass deportations, they said only the criminals. They said repeatedly at rallies, only the criminals, and we need the people to come in legally. They said it repeatedly. When Trump met with Netanyahu, Trump came out and said that Iran is going to kill me. When Netanyahu addressed a joint session of Congress, he said that Iran is trying to kill the president. So we knew this. We knew this. We knew this in 2024. And I was trying to tell you. I tried to warn you. I showed you this. And I tried to turn people out. I went and bought a billboard in Michigan, and we did this campaign on True Social and on Twitter, and the campaign said, no war with Iran, no immigration. We tried. And you had paid shills telling everybody, don't listen. Don't listen. That's not real. Trust the plan. Everything's fine. Don't black pill. Trump just said this and you're black pilling. It was guys like Andrew Torba. You know, and I know me and Torba are cool, but Torba, you were fucking wrong, bitch. We're cool now. I like the guy, but this guy was the epitome of smug and self-assured and ultimately completely wrong. And they all were. You know what Mike Cernovich said? Mike Cernovich, who was going around telling everybody I'm a Fed, because I know everybody, I have eyes everywhere. Mike Cernovich and Tucker are going around telling everybody I'm a Fed. Cernovich in 24 said, well, we'll pressure Trump after he wins the election. You know what he said the other day? He said, it looks like Trump is pulling out of Minnesota. I hope that's not true. That's your pressuring the administration. The administration needs to be pressured. He goes on Twitter and says, I hope they're not withdrawing. These were the people. It was Old Glory Hole Club. It was Cernovich. It was Pat Passover Press. It was all these different people. They said, pay no attention to Fuentes. He's a Democrat. Oh, he's with Harris. Oh, he's with the Biden DOJ. He took the deal, blah, blah. While they shilled for the most Zionist bullshit administration in history. And now look at what you got. Epstein files covered up. No deportations. War with Iran. Exactly as I said. What does that tell you about those people that try to get you not to listen? Those people that are being paid under the table. There was a big piece about this in the Wall Street Journal 2 or 3 weeks ago. And it talks about how the new form of lobbying is influencers. In the old days, you need to register as a lobbyist, and a special interest would pay a specialized person to go to D.C. and wine and dine the congressman. Now, it's completely unregulated. The parties, the PACs, the committees, they will shell out unlimited money to influencers on Twitter. It's exorbitant. It's obscene. And they start shilling for stuff like, we need to go to war in the Congo. We need to go to war in the Congo and relieve them from the Rwandan proxies. We need to go to war in Nigeria. We need to go to war in the Congo for their minerals. India is paying these people. India, Congo, Israel, of course. Qatar, I'm sure. There's so much money. The system is awash with this kind of cash. I'm the only one that isn't taking lobbyist money. I'm the only one that isn't taking influencer money. And by the way, that's a big part of why I am extreme and provocative, because somebody that is going out there and saying nigger every day, and someone that's going out there and is just offending people for no reason, people say, why is he doing this? Because I'm a free man. I'm an independent man. I'm not relying on a check coming in from India to write some report about how, the real problem is Pakistan. I'm not getting a check from Congo to talk about how there's a Christian genocide and we need to fight Rwanda and Uganda in the East. So that's a little note about my credibility. You don't need to watch me because you're in love with me. You don't need to watch me because you think I'm a great guy. You need to watch me because I'm the only one that has my finger on the pulse. I told you this was going to happen. If you wanted to know the future, you should have watched my show. Everybody else is watching all this other nonsense because that nonsense reaffirms what you feel in the present moment. So whether that is being pro-Trump, whether that's blaming Charlie Kirk's death on Israel, saying that ICE is in bed with the IDF, whatever the flavor of the month is, the flavor of the month in 24 was Trump. The flavor of the month now is like third worldism. It's that perspicacity. That's what makes the difference. And you really need to wonder about those people that tried to discredit me, because that's what they did. They didn't argue with me. They didn't debate me. They didn't refute me. They just tried to discredit me with unsubstantiated allegations. And they did that simply to get people to take their eye off the ball long enough to fork over their votes. Don't pay attention to what this guy is saying. Just give us your vote. And then they disappeared after that. And then it was one disaster after another. Now it's 2026. People are wondering how it got so bad. People are left wondering. They're left with their assholes sore, not to be gross, but they are literally the raped. They have been absolutely raped. They have been date raped, drugged, violated, and they wake up saying, oh, what happened? I thought it was going to be a golden age. Wait, where's the Creed concerts? Jack Posobiec told me it was going to be a never-ending Creed concert. John Doyle said to trust the plan. It's a joke. We need something more radical and more extreme and more intense than anybody thinks is reasonable right now. That is what needs to happen. ICE has not gone far enough. Trump and the National Guard have not gone far enough. What's the answer to Trumpism? We need to build upon Trumpism. We need to deepen it. We need to expand it. We need to make it more radical. We need somebody in 2028 that makes Donald Trump look like a fucking joke. That's the only solution. That's what makes me worried. When I see people crying about a couple of dead left-wing protesters, you are simply not prepared for what has to happen next. There needs to be a lot more ICE. There needs to be a lot more of that sort of thing before we take our country back. So we need to start laying the groundwork. We need to start imagining and visualizing what it's going to take to save our country. This is not the tragedy. We are going to be the tragedy if we don't win the battle. Renée Good, Alex Pretti, wait until Western civilization falls. That's the tragedy. Wait until they raise the flag of BLM. They raise the flag of the Islamic Crescent. They raise the hammer and sickle, the Star of David. Wait until they raise that flag over our defeated civilization when we live among the ruins, hunted like animals in South Africa. You think this is a tragedy? Let me give you a crystal ball. I'll show you the tragedy. This is not a tragedy. This is nothing. This is a good start. But we need somebody to finish the job. That's the difference. So anyway, we're going to move on. We'll take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this. I'm going to get set up here with my headphones. But that's real. I've been loving what Bannon has been saying. He has been so hardcore. I love it. We need someone pushing that message. It has to be victory. Victory at any cost. Victory over everything. Only victory. There is no substitute for a total American victory. And I don't care how many left-wing protesters have to be ground under the treads of the tanks to get there. I don't care how many 5-year-olds need to be arrested. That's the kind of mindset we need to bring to the table. Otherwise, you should just go f*** off to some other country and wait for America to fall. We got to get serious. We have to get serious. All right, but let's take a look at this. These people are not ready. Why is nobody ready? Anybody get that reference? I'm never beating the allegations. Why is nobody ready? All right, let's take a look. Let's see what we got here.
4%, 20. All right, so I need y'all to bear with me because it was hard for me to write notes down during this one. Usually I have a lot more notes. The reason why I'm breathing heavy and perhaps saying that it was hard to write down notes, just because I get where Nick is coming from. I just don't align with it as far as it producing the goal that I would like for the country. I don't see how leaning into more left versus right, leaning into more, this is a civil war, leaning in, like Nick is talking about going to battle. And I know it just may be on more ideas and policies, but I'm not sure that a lot of people are able to decipher and filter through what's performative rhetoric, what's going to rouse somebody up to get out here and compound the already radical back and forth that we're seeing with a lot of our leaders, the politicians, influencers, political commentators, mainstream news outlets, all of the above. And I know that my approach is always going to seem as weak in certain points when I'm talking to people on the left, or weak in certain people, that's my right, y'all left, or weak when I'm talking to other people on the right, or people that lean more into political affiliation. And I think all of this more extreme rhetoric, more radicalized rhetoric that in a lot of ways people will say are justified. Well, they're doing this, so therefore we got to take it up a notch. Well, they're doing this, so therefore we got to take it up a notch. What position does that land us in? Like, largely, when I take a step back and look at what America is, America seems to be, to me, the result of what happens when the powers that be are able to take two different groups, right, and exercise control over two different groups by radicalizing them and trying to draw them as far apart from each other as possible. This is what America has become. And what their goal is to, as it seems to me, is to create these radical monoliths. This group of people, they just all are going to, hey, we present something no matter what, they're going to see it through this lens. This group of people, they're going to see it through this lens. And that's why we have no common sense in approaching a lot of these situations. Nick made the statement that for a lot of the people that are complaining the way that ICE does stuff, do they have a different way of a different approach to it? And if not, you're just a B, he called people. I actually asked a bunch of people that over the last few days and the last few weeks, I should say, since the Renée Good situation, especially. And a lot of people who are pissed off at the ICE agents, more liberal leaning, I'll ask them like, well, have you ever thought, for one, that, you know, how we got to this becoming a problem with Joe Biden's administration largely being the ones that let in, these are more liberal leaning policies to let in a lot of these illegal migrants, and the reasons behind it, which we've talked about on previous shows. I don't want to get too far into that and go off on a tangent, but I think it was political strategy to bring in a lot of the illegal migrants on behalf of the Democrats and liberals. And I asked the people that lean that way or identify with that party, whatever, pledge their allegiance to that party, it seems like. And they never thought about the fact that, okay, Democrats are responsible for this. And also, how do you go in and mass deport? Like, how do you strategically mass deport illegal migrants when they're illegal and when they've come in at such crazy numbers? Are you going to have some of these situations that may go left? Of course. Of course. But when I ask those people that, they never have an answer. It's like they never even took it into consideration. So now when they see a situation like Renée Good, or they see a situation like Alex Pretti and the other examples that we see, they're approaching it from a mindset that's not as balanced to produce results that will have the country moving in a positive direction. They're producing and processing it in a way that's just going to serve the interest of their politicians that they've aligned themselves with. And I think it happens on both sides. But to Nick's point, he said, you know, what do you suggest? That's something that I always look at. So before Nick was even talking about it, I had already had that. And I think we talked about it either on today's live show or yesterday's live show, maybe in the video with you all as well, which is, to me, this is simple when you take a step back and remove political affiliation and all the emotions and radical nature of all that. Donald Trump, as the leader of the country, can organize efforts within the country to go to another country in Venezuela and go remove their president and bring him back here to the United States. Donald Trump has the ability to do that. But Donald Trump doesn't have the ability to go to Minnesota and figure out how you can have the police out there protecting the civilians as well as protecting the ICE agents, making sure that even if situations do go extreme, or even if there are mistakes made, that you can limit those. And if when mistakes are made, perhaps people aren't killed. Perhaps it's an assault, the mistake, rather than, well, you know, this was a mistake that ended up in somebody being shot and killed. Perhaps that would make the ICE agents feel a bit safer, to the point where when the whistles are going off and seems like they don't have the proper training to deal with situations like this, perhaps it would help to have some police in the area. Now, a lot of people will say, and I believe rightfully so, that the Democrats like Tim Walz, that they're rallying people up to go out there and crash out and not even giving the people the protection with the police, because it seems like the police are getting, you know, swayed one way or another from a political standpoint. No, as a police officer, your job is to serve the people. Doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat and you lean with Tim Walz and you disagree with the ICE agents coming into your town. Matter of fact, that's even more reason for you to then step up and make sure that you're at these protests protecting the people if you think so bad of ICE. Because now you're putting everybody in a position to have a more dangerous outcome. It seems like the more we get caught up in this left versus right and fighting left for this versus that, it loses sight of our common sense and logic, because we get so emotionally engaged in this. This is simple. This is not a difficult situation, in my opinion. It is challenging, but it's not challenging in a way where it's like, hey, perhaps the police should be there. With all the animosity between ICE and the civilians, maybe there's a group of people out there that also are law enforcement that can come in and maybe make sure that everything's going well. Maybe at least give it a more likelihood of having a positive outcome with it while executing something that is challenging. This isn't rocket science. This should be common sense. And I think that because when you hear about the situation, people are either saying what Nick is saying, which is frustration, which is also fear that I hear when I hear Nick talking about, and he talks about this all the time. And perhaps it's a legit fear as far as, hey, they're trying to get rid of us. They're trying to commit a genocide against white people in America. So therefore, when Nick embraces that, he then sees it. It's almost like a black person in critical race theory. You know what I mean? They see everything. They see race through, like, that's the lens that they see everything through that happens. That's the scope. That's the hey, bring me my racial binoculars. That's how they're processing things from a racial standpoint. It's like Nick's doing the same thing on his end from a critical race theory. He's seeing, well, in 2050, the numbers of white people are going to be dwindling. Why are these people encouraging more people to come in here? It's destroying our culture. A lot of these complaints may be legit. And this is where I'm talking about the fear coming into play. So you already have a policy that's radical on the other side that you disagree with. Then you add on your fear. That's a bad concoction when it comes to somebody having a leadership position. And then what is he going to do? He's going to rile up everybody else. He's going to rile up everybody else to the point where I'm looking at a lot of these comments and, you know, you have Trump who's jumping out here, going back on his words. Stephen Miller jumped out the window, and I'm glad Nick called him out, where he was calling Alex Pretti a domestic terrorist and saying that he was trying to gun down a federal officer. And it's like, bro, that's not what we saw. Like, we actually saw the video. Did you not see the video before you made those statements? And then he has to walk them back saying, oh, well, it looks like mistakes were made. See, they do the same thing, and then we reflect it with our energy to the point where now, even when Trump walks it back, or even when Stephen Miller walks it back and acknowledges that there were mistakes made, now the people, because they've already been arguing the points of Stephen Miller and Donald Trump with their ops, their political ops, whether it's on X in a comment section, on YouTube, whatever it is, now they're arguing with people to the point where they're standing on it more than Stephen Miller and Trump. You're allowing Stephen Miller and Trump's messaging and rhetoric to get you riled up. But then when they pull it back, you're not even realizing, like, oh, maybe I should scale my energy back. No, you're actually doubling down. And once again, a lot of these things may be legit complaints. I'm not here to argue right and wrong, because when you have left versus right, the right for one is largely going to be the wrong for the other. When you have things so radically opposed, right? And that is on purpose. That is the whole point. That is how they control us. That is how they create a monolith. Just, hey, now all we got to do is talk to your group. The Democrats will be monolithic when it comes to these issues, and the Republicans will do the same on their end. It makes them, it's lazy leadership. It's lazy leadership, and lazy leadership largely creates a laziness in us when we're processing what's going on with a lot of these different situations happening across America. Donald Trump should be aware of the fact, like, hey, ICE agents, there's some animosity here. Let's make sure that when we go into this situation, we have as much support from the local police as possible. Oh, they're not agreeing with us? Okay, well, we need to go there and figure that out before we have ICE agents hitting the street, because it's dangerous for the ICE agents. And when things become dangerous for ICE agents, that becomes dangerous for the civilians, for the citizens. So we have to change the way that we're looking at this if we really want a different result, rather than just bickering back and forth between left versus right and us declaring war against each other and using all this performative rhetoric. We need to go, even if they die, even if they, well, I'm not here to, I'm not promoting killing anybody. It's like the rhetoric that we use. It impacts people. Leaders have to take that into account when you're voicing your opinion to your followers. What is the goal? I've said over and over, a lot of this stuff, it's not about me getting on here and talking to y'all and disagreeing or agreeing with Nick. It's like, okay, let's say that you agree that the situation with Alex Pretti and Renée Good, that any of them were justified. and even deserved, as Nick said in the previous episode. Let's say that you agree with those things. Is that something that not even, like, even if you think it was justified, even if you think it was deserved, do you not think, like, to yourself how dangerous that can be to the country and the type of riots and uprisings that could create to the country? Even if you're just looking at it from that standpoint, even if you have no empathy or sympathy for the person. And I think a lot of people actually do have empathy and sympathy for the person, but because it's now become a right versus left, a competitive thing, it's like you got to double down and use rhetoric to describe these people who they've died, bro. They've already been shot. Like, you don't need to use this type of performative rhetoric when you're talking about somebody that's already been killed, bro. Like, ease up. We're reminding ourselves, aren't we supposed to be Christian with a lot of this stuff? A lot of the people looking at this video? Aren't we supposed to follow the teachings of Jesus? So, okay, somebody made a mistake. They did something idiotic. Okay, they got killed for it. Isn't that enough without us doubling down and still feeling the need to call them every single name in the book? Like, I just don't understand what's the purpose of this? What outcome are we looking for? So that's all I hear when I hear Nick standing on his stuff. It's like, it's not even about, even if Nick is 1,000% right, what is this going to accomplish? What direction is this going to point his loyal followers in? We have to be careful. If we're trying to protect our country, then we can't just look at it as if this is a civil war. Now, a lot of people already argue that we're already in the civil war. I would argue that they're trying their very best. And from a mental standpoint, yes, we are in a civil war, but this can turn very physical very quickly. And who knows where this country will go once that stuff happens. We have to figure out a way to steer this ship in a different direction. I'm not saying we got to go back where we came from, but perhaps we need to figure out a way where, hey, let's use some common sense here. Let's come together. Let's drop your flag. Drop your gang affiliation, bro. Drop it. Let's come to the table and figure out what makes sense. This is a simple thing. You telling me that two 15-year-olds could figure this out? 30-year-olds, like, you come to the table and say, okay, the ICE agents, they need to do their job. A lot of people are getting pissed off. They already have a dangerous job and a challenging job because they have to try to get rid of a bunch of illegal migrants that were let in here. We don't always know their names, don't always know their addresses. How would we know their names and addresses if they came here illegally? So understanding that it's a challenging situation, it should be all hands on deck. What is the goal of this? Donald Trump, use your leadership to convince people. You know what real leadership is? Being able to convince people that are not just in your gang, that don't just already automatically agree with you. True leadership is when you become elected president, you not only represent the people that voted for you, you not only represent the people that put money in your pocket, you represent the entire country. So therefore, you have to move accordingly. So true leadership, and it may take a little bit more. You got to figure it out how to approach it the right way. You may not be able to use the same strategy that you use to just appeal to the group of people that are just loyal followers of you, no matter what you do. That's part of being a leader. If police officers just say, "Oh yeah, we're not showing up in Minnesota because we're rocking with Waltz. We're not showing up." No, there needs to be some. First off, those police officers, if it gets to a point where this is expressed and Donald Trump is coming in and saying, hey, this needs to happen, and these police officers aren't following their rules, they need to be fired. They need to be fired. Now, with that should also come a bit of grace, should also come a bit of understanding. Like, Trump, go in there, use your leadership skills. And even to when Nick is talking about a lot of this stuff and he calls out how everybody had it wrong when it came to Trump and how he had it right. Touche, brother. Touche. And as somebody that did not vote the previous two elections, I'm with you on that. I got fed up and I was like, yo, this is stupid. Why are we participating in this? If enough people just said, you know what, I'm gonna fall back, that's the pressure that we need to put on a lot of these politicians in order for them to adjust their approach. But when we look at it through the lens of, how Nick may be expressing it, how a lot of us have been accustomed to expressing it, to me, it just leads us in a direction that none of us actually want to go. It leads us in a direction where nobody wants to go. This is going to destroy America. And I think I lost my train of thought as far as another point that I was going to address. But let me scan through here a little bit, see what I missed. I'm probably not going to talk too long to y'all. But yeah, people like Stephen Miller, I'm glad that Nick called him out. All of this back and forth. And a lot of these people, I think we got to realize that a lot of these people are just using rhetoric to make us extreme, to make us so we won't pay attention to the other stuff that we probably don't agree with them doing. We have to adjust that. We have to put that pressure on. Damn, I was going to make a good point, I feel like, but let me get to the notes. I'm sure it'll come up. All right, so going back to the notes. So Nick started off the show. You know, he says it stuns Nick how many people are not getting it about Alex Pretti. They are treating it like it's some sort of tragedy. Bro, the entire situation is a tragedy. The entire situation is a tragedy. I know it makes Nick feel good to pound his chest and get up here and say, hey, if we want to, so what, some gay lesbian or fat lesbian poet can die. This is like, bro, really? That's the godly energy that we're putting out. The whole thing is a tragedy. It's a tragic situation. And on every level. And there's blame to go around. But when we can get people to come to the table and approach it from a lot, when we can come to the table, then we can put pressure on the politicians to do the right thing. Until then, we'll forever be misled. We will forever be misled. All right, so Nick was saying stuff. We have to win. They have to lose. F them. Run them over and say that that's the bonus round. And another thing that I did not notice, and that's a wild thing to say, but whatever. I didn't know that the additional magazines were in the car. Based on, and that's what Nick said, so I'm going to take his word for it. Unless I misheard it, you guys can let me know. But I didn't know that the additional magazines were in the car. They made it seem like he had the additional magazine on him right then and there. And this is another thing that is it's very telling. And we talked about it on the live show. Do y'all realize that Kyle Rittenhouse went to a protest opposing the protesters? Like the protesters were protesting law enforcement, different things that happened, I believe. And he went there with a rifle to oppose the protesters. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, Alex Pretti, why would you go to a protest with a gun? That's stupid. That's silly. Trump's saying that. Kash Patel's saying that. But where was your energy when you have Kyle Rittenhouse doing that? And then he pretty much got off. I think he got off on all the charges, and he actually shot protesters because it was a defense, right? They saw it as him just defending himself. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't get this same type of treatment that y'all saying. Matter of fact, he was heralded like a hero. He got to meet and shake President Trump's hand. Y'all were showing him love as a hero of the NRA. And this is where the inconsistency comes in. How is he a hero, but then Alex Pretti is an idiot for going with his gun and not even brandishing it, not even flashing it. But Kyle Rittenhouse can bring a big rifle and shoot protesters. So if I'm Alex Pretti and I'm going to a protest where I know that there was a Kyle Rittenhouse that came to the protest, so people that oppose the protest are going to be there and they're allowed to bring their rifles, why would I not have my gun on me? And where's the consistent energy when it comes to this? Because a lot of y'all who were calling Alex Pretti dumb for bringing the gun to the protest, I guarantee that a lot of y'all, you may not want to admit it to yourself, but you know it's true. A lot of y'all were celebrating Kyle Rittenhouse. The energy was different. The energy was even different in the statement, I'm sure, with the NRA. And I've never even seen the NRA statement on Kyle Rittenhouse. But I would bet everything that the energy of that statement was totally different compared to the energy of this statement. We know the energy of Donald Trump and his administration was different. So Nick went on to mention like the Trayvon Martins, the Mike Browns. I don't really want to get into all that. But, you know, Nick asked this question. And so Nick was mad at Trump for conceding that they're being too aggressive. He clearly thinks that it's already a civil war. And Nick thinks that only liberals wanted Somalis here be based on our laws saying that we have to take them in when they were refugees. And I would actually argue or have a different opinion on it. It's not just liberals. This is what clouds a lot of our judgment when we think just liberals want these illegal migrants in. I've been there with that thought where it's like, even though the liberals did have, they were the ones opening the borders. And I think Nick mentioned that even Trump, during his administration, they had high levels during a couple of those months when they got pressure to stop keeping the kids in cages. I believe I heard that correctly. But it's not just liberals that want the illegal migrants here. It's people that do not identify as liberals or conservatives. It's people that donate money to Donald Trump, that donate money to across the board. They'll donate to the Republican candidate, they'll donate to the Democrat candidate, because they don't care about the pettiness of left versus right, Democrat versus Republican. What they care about is creating enough leverage to where things are done in their favor to increase the profit margins of their businesses so they can pay less taxes and whatever else compared to what they're currently paying, or compared to, let's say, somebody getting into office and saying, like Donald Trump was saying before, we need to get rid of all these people and hire American workers. But then what did he say about the H-1B visas? Oh, well, we have to have these people here. Americans aren't smart enough. We're not good enough for the jobs. We don't know these skills. We don't want to work on the farm. And then you got Jasmine Crockett out here saying, yeah, we don't want to work on farms. We done picking cotton. These are all people that are in cahoots with each other. And I'm not saying that they sit down like the Democrats sit down and figure out a play with the Republicans. I'm not saying that, even though some people probably do. What I'm saying is that all of their bosses who they answer to, they set this system up. So they're in cahoots and without even being a part of the game plan. You think that these people with money and power are going to trust these silly politicians to come up with the strategies? They're not going to trust them to do that. They're all in cahoots against each other. So while Nick is saying that the liberals wanted them to come in, I totally understand that from a voting standpoint. They want to make sure that they can bring in their next group of victims that will be a significant part of their voting base, because that's what they rely on, selling their services to victims. However, it's also the elites. And even though the conservatives during the right time may fight against that type of stuff, the people that are the elites still push for it. That's why Donald Trump completely changed his tune. It's bigger than just liberals and Democrats versus conservatives and Republicans. And until we start seeing it that way, we'll always get caught up in this cycle of hating each other, of one person radicalizing this group more and more, and it going back and forth. Things just becoming more and more radicalized. And then the silent majority, they end up being separated more and more from each other, and they have to pick sides and more so align themselves with the radicalist sanctions in the most radical groups in their party. So so it's once again, it's not that I disagree with Nick is saying based on his goal. He's a competitor looking at this like a game. We're playing against them, so therefore for us to win, they have to lose. But this is different, this game. Like we actually, no, when you win, you become the president of everybody. You don't just win and you're in control of your group. When you win, you're in control of everybody. So we can't just look at it like it's a sport game. Hey, we need to win so they lose. Let's have some common sense come to the table. Let me ask y'all this. Let's say that there's 10 things that Democrats want done and 10 things that Republicans want done based on their voter base. These are 10 things that are important to the Democrats' voting base, 10 things that are important to the Republican voting base. With all the bickering back and forth, and as things become more and more radical, let's say that this group ends up getting 4 or 5 of their things done when they're winning, and this group gets 4 or 5 of things done when they're winning or in office, right? It's probably not even that. I would actually argue, and I don't know how we would play this out, that the Democrats and Republicans, if they worked together, if we forced them to work together, matter of fact, let's take the politicians out of it. If the people just came together, I think that we can come to some sort of agreement where working together, the Democrats would get more than 4 or 5 of their things done. And in all actuality, it's probably when we're doing the back and forth bickering, you probably get like 2 things done maybe, and 2 things done on this side. But the point that I'm making is when the people come together, I think that you probably be able to get upwards 5, 6 things done on your list, 7 things done on your list, maybe 5, 6, 7 things done on your list. Without realizing that, hey, when we look at this as hating each other, then we're limiting other people from doing certain things, largely that we may not even disagree with. I'll give you an example. There's a whole lot of Democrats that disagree that boys should be playing sports against girls, that teachers should not be forced to tell the parents that their kids are socially transitioning their genders, that there shouldn't be little boys books in schools about little boys pleasing each other sexually, that there maybe shouldn't be drag queens in libraries in town reading books to kids in school. When things become so radical, we end up focusing on all of those things passionately rather than focusing on, if we would have just came together, we could have had 7 of these things that we agree on. But instead, we focus on the 2 things that we hate about each other, that we're conditioned to hate about each other. And I'm not sure that I'm explaining this correctly because it just came to me as I was talking to y'all. But if it's just about getting stuff done, I'm pretty sure that both parties would get more of the things done that they want done if you work together rather than getting caught up in this WWE reality TV show of us versus them and us rooting for it while the people that are putting the plays together, controlling the puppets, they're just benefiting off of us believing that wrestling is real. Like a lot of us grow up thinking to a probably embarrassing age. So I don't, like I said, that wasn't thought out. That was just what came to mind. But I just see our country, we need to move in a different direction, bro. We need to move in a different direction. Perhaps not be so focused on proving our point, right versus wrong. They're crazy. They think we're crazy. And this is where leadership comes into play. This is why I always reference Remember the Titans. My favorite scene is when Bertier and Julius are going back and forth. And Bertier says something to Julius, and Julius snaps back and says, attitude reflects leadership, Captain. Like pretty much, you calling us all out, but are you holding the team to the same standard? Are you holding yourself to that standard and then allowing the team to jump on board? Attitude reflects leadership. You won the election, Trump. Now do your job. Your job is to not just serve the people that voted for you, but to lead the entire country. And that needs to be the standard that we set and force our politicians to be about, rather than us doing so much bickering because they'd rather us bicker, because then when we bicker, there's less accountability for them to actually do things for the country, move us in a positive direction, because we so busy bickering with each other. So therefore, we'll defend anything that Trump says or does just because, I'm not rocking with them. And I need to make sure that I'm proving to these people why I voted for Trump and justifying why I had the views that I had the last couple of years and maybe beyond that. We got to grow up. It's okay with admitting that you made a mistake. It's okay with admitting that hey, we need to be more critical of Donald Trump on these issues because he's not doing the things that we voted for him to do. And it's also okay to be critical if you didn't vote for Donald Trump, to be critical of your own and say, hey, we did put ICE agents in a very difficult position. Perhaps us getting caught up in all these Democratic rhetoric with them standing with us, opposing and doing all this protesting stuff that they would never do on their own. Perhaps we should maybe get out of that mindset and put more pressure for them to work together rather than for them to just behave in a way that just riles up the people. And now it's just a cycle of chaos and nothing ever gets done. So that's really all I got for y'all today. What are y'all thoughts? Like I said on the last show, maybe I'm living in just a dream world, but if what we're seeing right now, what all these people believe in WWE, if we've seen WWE become the reality of our politics and our political leaders and country leaders, American leaders, global leaders, then perhaps the things that I'm suggesting is not as far-fetched. Because the things that we've accepted that we're experiencing right now, I'm sure at if we weren't growing up in this period and we didn't just get conditioned to where this is the norm, we'd be looking at this like, yo, this is crazy. So let's break down that conditioning and let's figure out a way to come together, and figure this stuff out. Let's put the pressure on the leaders to actually lead instead of just to incite chaos amongst each other, amongst all of us towards each other. So therefore they can hide behind the chaos and never be held accountable to doing their job for the American people. So as always, appreciate y'all. Let me know where my bias may be coming into play, creating some blind spots. I try to be objective with this. I'm trying to be as objective with this as possible. And I know that's always going to put me in a position where the people on the left are going to say, hey, you're too weak in your thinking. Or the people on the right will say, hey, you're too weak in your thinking. Like, bro, it doesn't do the country any good when we're just fighting each other. That's why they want us to fight, because they're not interested in the country becoming better. They're interested in what's best for them, their pockets. And these politicians show this over and over. So we shouldn't be surprised by it. But we need to adjust our approach. That would be my suggestion. But like, subscribe. Let me know where I may be off, where I may be on. Do the same thing when it comes to Nick. Turn your notifications on as well. Shout out to Big Bro Robert, always reminding us to control the algorithm, never let the algorithm control us. So on that note, I'll see y'all soon.
TB, GI, TC. It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there. Let's figure out a split that's honorable and fair. Tell me where you trying to take it. Bro, I'll meet you there. 1600 Penn, Wash, DC. Swear I saw the vision riding through the DMV. I envision prayers, but I could do VP. Hillbilly, Elegy, fuck, I look like JD. Shout out my cheat code, Dave and Karen raised me. And my big bro, a nuclear family.
And they don't like that. Strong fathers in the crib, BLM for that. LBJ society created all that. Victimhood mentality, I can't embrace that. And everything they taught in school, assume it's all cap. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Everything I said I'd be, I am that. Ain't no introduction, just some fun facts. In case you were wondering, I am that.
I know you heard me hit it 3 times for Dr. Umar. Shout out to Umar, man. We ain't kicking nobody when they down. And shout out to everybody that continues to show love, support, appreciating the message that I'm giving y'all along with the bro Nick's message. We gonna keep pushing, man. And shout out to the haters too, cause y'all in the comments heavy too. y'all the ones that gave me the inspiration to create this song. They kept saying like, who's the random black guy in the corner? I am.